Hey everyone, welcome to another video. We're now in this video going to be using the reference angle, this thing we introduced in the last video, to do a bunch of questions in which we explore trigonometry from some larger angle values ranging from 0 degrees to 360 degrees. So I'm going to write up my first question here, and we're going to look at how we may want to approach something like this. And in doing so, I'm going to work alongside my unit circle again. So drawing this guy in here, I have 1, 1, negative 1, negative 1. Okay, so here I am looking at 330 degrees. So my theta value here is 330 degrees. So we want to think, where on our unit circle is that going to be? I'm writing here these kind of significant angle values just so we can determine what quadrant we're operating in. Now if I draw this angle here, I'm going to go all the way around and I'm going to end up roughly here. So if I draw my line out, so I have an angle value of, what was it, 330 degrees. And we just want to find here the relevant trig ratio and how it relates to the first quadrant. Because remember, before we talked about the reference angle as relating back to the first quadrant. So if I, for example, draw my right angle triangle here, I want to see what my reference angle, this guy in here, is going to be. My reference angle. Okay, so one way we looked at that is that we get our reference angle from doing 360 degrees minus my angle theta. Now here my angle is 330 degrees, so I'm going to do 360 degrees minus 330 degrees, and my reference angle is going to be 30 degrees. So once again, we are relating my big angle, 330 degrees, to some angle between 0 and 90 degrees. Because remember, we're always trying to relate this back to the first quadrant. So we can say that here, sine of 330 degrees is equal to, it's the same as saying the sine of 30 degrees, but one thing we have to remember is what is the sine, or what I mean by sine is plus or minus, of my sine ratio here. Now remember, my sine corresponded to my y value. We talked about this a bit before. So in the fourth quadrant, I'm underneath the origin here of 0. So here my sine is negative. So when I get sine of 330 degrees, using the reference angle, that's going to correspond to a negative sine of 30. Because, remembering here, our ASTC, these letters that I've drawn here help us to determine which of my trig ratios are positive in all of the quadrants. So here I'm in quadrant 4. The only trig ratio that's positive here is cos. So my sine is going to be negative. Okay, let's try another question. We have cos of 162 degrees. So let's draw out another unit circle, and I'd encourage you guys to draw these into your books until you get really familiar with doing these. Eventually you'll be able to do these in your head without having to write it down every single time, but this is just to give you a little bit of guidance so you can really visualize what's happening here. So I have cos of 162 degrees. So I want to figure out first, which quadrant does this lie in? Now, as I write these, you guys can have a think which quadrant this might lie in. And some of you may have guessed that 162 degrees is between 90 and 180. So we're going to be in my quadrant 2 here. So I'm just going to draw up roughly a 162 degree angle. So my theta here is 162 degrees. And I'm going to make a right angle triangle here. And my mission here is to find my reference angle, this one in here. So let's write that in another color. I'm trying to find this guy down here. This is my reference angle. Okay, so I'm in the second quadrant. So that means my reference angle is going to be 180 degrees minus my angle theta. This is a supplementary angle relationship, remembering that this is a straight line. The angle on a straight line is 180 degrees. So theta and my reference angle add up to 180. So therefore I can find my reference angle by doing 180 minus theta. Okay, so let's continue on with this. My theta now, I can substitute 162 degrees in for that symbol. So I have 180 minus 162, which is then going to give me 18 degrees. Okay, perfect. So now we have found an angle to relate this thing in the second quadrant back to what we know about trigonometry in the first quadrant. So here I can now say my cos of 162 degrees is going to be equal to cos of 18 degrees. Now, we're not quite finished. Remember, we just want to check what the value of cos is in the second quadrant. Is it going to be positive or negative? So remembering that all of my trig ratios are positive in the first quadrant, my sine is positive in the second, tan positive in the third, cos positive in the fourth. And now I'm in the second quadrant here. So my cos is going to be negative. So I can say that cos of 162 degrees is the same as negative cos of 18 degrees. Okay, so finally, I'm going to do one more question here. Question 3, where I want to find tan of 230 degrees. Now, if you want, you can have a go at this. You can pause the video, but you can think about it while I draw this in. But if I have my unit circle here, and these are just getting worse as I draw them, as you can probably see, I want to find the tan of 230 degrees. So looking at my angles and where my quadrants are, I have 90 degrees, 180, 270, and 360. Okay, now this is an angle bigger than 180 and less than 270. So it's going to live somewhere in my third quadrant. Somewhere here roughly. So this theta value is 230 degrees. So what I want to do with my reference angle here, because that now is going to be this guy over here, I'm trying to find an acute angle once again. So I've drawn my right angle triangle in. I'm trying to find this reference angle. Now here, I can see that my theta value is 230 degrees. And this portion of the angle here is 180 degrees. So my reference angle is going to be the difference between theta and 180. So my reference angle is going to be the difference between theta and 180 degrees. So in order to find this, I want to do the subtraction here, and I'm going to get that this is equal to 50 degrees here. Okay, now, therefore, to relate this 230 to an angle that's between 0 and 90 degrees, I can say that tan of 230 degrees is equal to the tan of 50 degrees. And once again, just checking, I know that I have all positive in first quadrant, sine positive in second, tan in the third, cos is positive in the fourth. We are in my third quadrant in which tan is positive. So the sign here, I can just leave it like this, or I can do a plus tan of 50 degrees. But now I'm in the third quadrant, so using this reference angle between 0 and 90 degrees, now I have found what tan of 230 is and how I can relate it back to something in this first quadrant. And tan is going to be positive here because my angle of theta falls in the quadrant in which tan is positive. That brings us to the end of this video. Hopefully these practice questions have given you a bit of confidence to approach these yourselves, but we will continue looking at some of these unit circle trig ideas in the next video, and we will start moving on to looking at graphs. So thank you so much for joining me here, and I'll see you in the next one.